Welcome back to my top 50 board games of all time series. Today we're tackling the penultimate chapter, the silver medal winners that were snubbed at the last minute, games 20 to 11. I worked out that I've played around 2,000 different board games over the years, so these are the top 1%. And if you're in the 1%, please become a patron of the channel. I'm currently trying to raise money so I can keep making videos for another year. And to thank you, I've made 5 exclusive videos about the rest of my top 100 games that you can get at patreon.com/Actualol. And number 20 is Patchwork, the original Tetris puzzle tile laying game that a lot of games have been inspired by since, but Patchwork is still the best. It's a 2-player only game and you're taking it in turns to take a Tetris piece and add it to your board, which you're trying to fill up in the neatest way possible. No gaps. At the end of the game, you're going to get -2 points for every single empty space on your board. But you're wrangling with the fact that every piece has a cost. First, you're going to have to pay the price in buttons, which is the currency of the game. But every piece also costs time and you're tracking that on the board. So when you sew a piece, you move that much time along the track. Once you get to the end, that's it, the game's over. So you have to weigh up how long each piece takes to sew because you can get to the end of the game and have loads of empty spaces on your board because you were only buying pieces that took a long time to sew. It's a really clever dilemma that pulls against your natural desire to take pieces that are going to fit into your puzzle neatly because the uglier, more difficult shapes are cheaper. They are going to be better for you in the long run, but taking them, it just always feels like such a bad move because you're putting yourself into problems in terms of how are you going to fill up those gaps later. I love that you can look ahead and see what tiles are coming up. And because it's only a 2-player game, there's a real push and pull between getting the tiles you want and being gutted when they take the one you need. And the way the time track works allows you to make clever plays because the furthest person back takes the next turn. So you could take a tile that only takes 2 time to sew, still be the furthest back, and then get to take another piece immediately. So you can end up taking 2 pieces on the trot and maybe skip over a piece that you know your opponent wants. And the other real competition are these singular patches that go to the first player who passed over them on the time track. And they're so useful because they fill up singular spaces on your board, gaps that you would never normally be able to fill. So you're desperately trying to plan your turns so you'll get to the patches first. I love that core spatial puzzling of a Tetris game. Just trying to fit in everything neatly just really appeals to my brain, and I find it really satisfying when I get that perfect piece and slot it in. And so I've played all manner of Tetris games: Cottage Garden, Barren Park, Indian Summer, Spring Meadow, and loads more that I've forgotten about. And I come back to Patchwork because I think it does it the best. I think other Tetris games can get distracted with other mechanisms, that they become something else entirely and they lose that need for completion that you get with Patchwork. Patchwork knows what it is and does it better than any other game. And number 19 is Stockpile, which is a stock market game where you're trying to buy and sell shares to make the most money. But the interesting twist about this game is that it's about insider trading. You each have secret information about how the stocks are going to move. I know that Stanford Steel's price is going to go up by 4, but nobody else does. They will have information about the other stocks. And so at the end of the round, these prices are going to go up and down depending on the information that we all have. So that informs your decisions when it comes to buying shares. The way you get shares is by bidding on these piles of stocks. And these are created by the players. You're all given 2 cards and you take it in turns to add them to different stacks. I could put Stanford Steel, the stock I know is going up, with Epic Electric, which everyone else knows going down, so they're unlikely to bid against me on it. But if I make it too obvious, I go straight in to bid on that one, that's going to alert everyone else that Stanford Steel is going to be worth something soon, and so they might compete with me on it. I love the interaction between players, bumping players off, fighting over a particular pile, bidding on one so that you try and entice people to face down cards that they don't know what they are, and then changing your mind and going somewhere else later. Someone outbidding you and you just can't afford to get it, so you have to get something else on the cheap. And that secret information, knowing how the stocks are going to change, is so important for the game because you can watch how other people are bidding. And then later you get a chance to sell stocks before this moves. If someone sells up a bunch of stocks, you should probably follow suit because they're probably getting out before it tanks. The stocks can even reach the bottom and bankrupt, meaning that you lose them, they're worth absolutely nothing. I love the roller coaster of this game. You can really make and lose a lot of money, and those dramatic reveals of when you see how the stocks are going to change and see some players get bankrupt and some people make a fortune is really exciting. It captures that stock market feel of buying low and selling high, but in a way that's never dry or boring like some heavier stock market games. Stockpile does all the things I look for in a game. It captures a theme perfectly, it's interactive, it's entertaining and dramatic, and it does it all with a simple rule set. I'm not sure you can even buy it anymore, but this one is due a huge comeback. That is Stockpile. And number 18 is Nothing Personal, and this is one of my favorite negotiation games, where you're trying to win influence by controlling different members of the mafia. So this board represents the current mafia hierarchy. This person is in charge and these are their underlings, but everything can change throughout this game. You don't own any of these gangsters, but you can play your influence markers on them to try and control them. It's very much a power behind the throne sort of thing. You aren't the capo yourself, but if you have enough influence on the capo, then you control them, and that's all the power you need. You take it in turns to play cards which let you put influence on the gangsters. This one allows me to place 2 influence on a gambler, which is a type of gangster, so I can place 2 tokens down there. You're trying to have more influence on a gangster than anyone else, because when it comes to scoring, you're going to get a load of points and money. Each gangster is going to score you points for the position in the hierarchy that they're in, and what's on their card. As you go further down the hierarchy, the points for the positions get less good, which is why you want to get your gangsters that you control into the higher up positions. Once you've given out all the points and money for the current hierarchy, you then go back up the pyramid and take actions, starting with the lowest guy. And actually the better actions can be towards the bottom. So here the third guy, the lowliest person, can pay $10 to whack a gangster, to try and assassinate one of the other characters. And you're doing that to take them out of the hierarchy so that then your gangsters can move into their position, take their roles, and get their points. And there are actions that are going to change control of certain gangsters. This one can remove an influence marker. So if somebody's beating you on a particular gangster, you can now weaken them. This one allows you to place an influence marker, so you get to put an extra one down on any character that you want. There's a lot going on, and the control of gangsters can swing between players every single round. But what I love is that it's all available information. You can see what actions are going to be possible, so you can try to predict what's going to happen and how you can survive. Like a lot of negotiation games, you're trying to fly under the radar, not get caught up in too many battles with particular players, trying to sneak points from here and there. If you're the capo for a long time, that's going to make you a target and people are going to think you're doing better than you are. I love the way the game develops, that associate gangsters that don't even start off in the hierarchy, by the end of the game could end up being capo. So you can actually place influence on them before they're even going to score you any points, because you know that when these people get killed off, these people are going to take their position. And in and amongst all of this is a negotiation that you can give money to other players at any time for any reason to stop them from placing an influence marker on the gangster that you're trying to control. You can threaten them to do one of these actions on them that you're going to try and whack their gangster unless they pay you off. You can give someone money to help them pay towards trying to get someone else assassinated. There are blackmail markers you can place on someone else's gangster so that they can only use their action if they get your permission. So of course you're going to take money from them to do it. And extra money is going to let you buy more cards, which is going to allow you to place more influence on the board. I love everything about this game. It's such a wild ride of making deals and backstabbing people, just watching it all unfold. It's not for the faint-hearted. This is definitely one of the meaner negotiation games that I enjoy. But if you get into the spirit and enjoy that chaos, there's still thought and strategy to be had in that game. And it's not just about playing the board, but playing the players that you're with. That if you can grease the wheels with some dollars here and there, that might get you ahead. And I love that. It's perfectly thematic and it's exactly my kind of game. That's Nothing Personal. And number 17 is Las Vegas, which is my favorite simple dice game, and one of my favorite games to introduce newbies to modern board games. You're trying to win the most money by having the most dice at a casino at the end of the round. Every turn, you take all your dice and roll them in the middle. And then you have to place all of one number at that numbered casino. So I've got 2 1s. they have to all go at the number 1. If I'd rolled 6 ones, I could put 6 ones on the 1 casino, or I could choose to use a different number instead. Now that I've got the most dice at that casino, I'm going to get the best payout from there at the end of the round, as long as it stays like that. Someone else takes their turn, and if they put down more ones, then they're going to be in charge, and it goes back and forth as you fight it out for the different casinos. But the interesting twist at the game is when you get ties. If you have the same number of dice as someone else at that casino, you cancel each other out. Your dice are worthless, invisible. So here, red and green have both got 2 dice. They're going to get nothing, and blue with a singular dice is going to get the best card. So it can happen where you get to your final turn, you roll your last die, and you have to place it on that casino, and it forces you into a tie that means you get nothing from that casino. And it's the occasional moments of luck like that that bring drama to this game, that casinos will swing from one hand to the other in that final turn. I love the competition in this game, fighting it out to get the most amounts of money. And everyone's watching everyone else's turn because it's so important to how it's going to work out for them. And there are still important decisions. How do you spend your dice? You could go for the easy option, go for the lower money cards on casinos, but then risk tie-breaking with other people that have only put 1 die there themselves, or go big on 1 or 2 big casinos. Las Vegas is a great game on its own and would still be in my top 50, but I also really like what they added with Las Vegas Royale. And there are these special casino tiles that you can add to 1 or 2 casinos that give you special powers and mini games. I thought I wouldn't like it, that it would distract from the original game, but actually, it's fun to add 1 or 2 of them in. It gives you something else you can think about. If maybe you're not winning the casinos you want, you can sort of make a punt here. It's like being a poker player at a casino and maybe you're not doing that great in your game, so you decide to go and play the roulette for a bit. I wish I had it in a smaller box because it's the sort of game that you could take to any game night and just add a burst of fun if you need it with any type of people. Everyone's going to get into it. It's competitive but never mean or destructive, so easy to understand, and just so much fun. This is a classic game that should have sold millions of copies if it hasn't already. That is Las Vegas, or Las Vegas Royale. And number 16 is The Mind, and this is a card game like no other. You're playing cooperatively, trying to read each other's mind. You will have numbered cards that you're trying to play down into the center in numerical order, but you can't talk to each other. So you have no idea when to play your card. Except you do. You get a sense of when to play cards. You just take your time. You all start, you're all focused, and you wait. And if I had a 20, I look at the other players, I might put it down. And then someone adds to that, and we keep going. And if someone plays a card above what someone has in their hand, then we lose a life, and we carry on from there. But it doesn't typically happen that often. It's sort of a miracle of human connection that we're able to play this game and win this game. And that's what I love about it, is that it confounds your expectations about initially how easy it can be to play these cards in order. And it's nice because it starts off relatively easy. In level 1, you have 1 card each, and then 2 cards in level 2 and 3. And once you start to get to like 4 or 5 cards each, that's a lot of different numbers, and there's a lot of potential collisions in this deck from 1 to 100. So if I have 45 and they have 46, it's very hard to know which order to play them in, and I didn't even know that they had 46. And sometimes you get that miracle moment where you pull it off, and that feels incredible, and other times you might lose a life over it, but you're kind of like, well, that was bound to happen. But really what I love about this game is that intensity, that you're all locked into this moment. Nobody's talking, nobody's distracted or looking at their phones. You're looking at your cards and you're looking at the players and you're trying to get a sense. And so someone that's got higher numbers will tend to go back a bit like this. They might put their hands down. You're not giving away too much, but there's little stuff you can do. And that's the level I like to play The Mind at. I'm not sure if it's considered cheating by some, but I think it's way more fun when you're able to have those kind of moments, because you still have no idea the numbers of the cards that people have in their hand, but you're getting a sense of each other. And it means that you do slightly better in the game and you enjoy it more because you're just sharing these weird connections. I love that atmosphere it creates. There's no other game that does it. It's not just that you're not talking, it's that you're trying to read information from each other. And that you can't stop, you can't pause, you're in that rhythm. As soon as someone gets a phone call, then it's out. You've kind of lost the rhythm that you built up. And that's so important to playing the cards in order and feeling the vibe of the room. And I like that you'll play it once and have game over at level 4, and you'll always want to go back and do it again and get that bit further. And you will, because you've warmed up to the game. You've come together as a team. I appreciate it's not for everyone, but for me, some of my favorite gaming memories are playing round after round of the Mind in one evening. And I don't have that with many other games. It feels a bit like a religion in that the people on the outside just cannot understand what you see in this thing. And the people on the inside just feel this immense sense of enlightenment and joy that comes from this thing that they love. And in this instance, I am a great believer. That is the Mind. And number 15 is Just One, which is the most perfectly designed, well-rounded, flexible party game there is. I had a friend the other day who was watching my videos trying to find a recommendation for a game to play at a barbecue. And then they just gave up and asked me directly. And the answer is Just One. And I was talking the other day about what would be a good game to play in a hot tub. Just One. What would be a good game to play in space? Just One. What would be a good game to play from 3 to 100 players where everyone is all different ages and types of people. Some of them hate games, some of them are bad at learning rules, some of them love games. The answer is always Just One. You're playing cooperatively and you're trying to get one person to guess one word by giving one word clues, and they have one guess to get it right. Just one. So here the word is carpet, and all the other players have written in secret on their whiteboards a one word clue. So we've got rug, soft, rug, and flying. Now, before they show it to the guesser, they have to show it to each other. And if anyone wrote the same thing, rug and rug, they get crossed out. So the game is encouraging you to try and think outside the box, to write clues that no one else is going to think of so that they won't get crossed out. But if you write really obscure words that aren't that well connected to the word carpet, then they're never going to get it because of that either. And that's the inherent challenge of Just One, and why it works so well. Everyone can think of a word, and even if they do think of a really obvious one, well, maybe they'll get crossed out, and they'll learn as the game goes on next time that they don't want their word to be crossed out. So you sort of learn the rules or how the game works just through playing it. Every round takes a couple of minutes, and then you go again and again and again. And it's one of those games where everyone's enjoying so much that no one really thinks about whether they are winning or whether they won the game at the end of it. I think they just enjoy like winning one round, and that feels good, and then let's just play another one. And that's the sign of a great party game, that you're not there to win, you're just there to have fun. And Just One always delivers on that. Just One is on this list because I get to play it all the time, and that makes it more fun for me than a game that's sitting on the shelf. Whilst a lot of my top 50 is niche picks that are personalized to me, Just One is a game that works for more people than it doesn't. And if I was going to recommend any one game to any one person on the street, it will probably be Just One. And number 14 is Libertalia Winds of Galecrest, which is a cutthroat pirate game where you're trying to collect the most gold. The idea is that you all represent a ship as part of the pirate fleet, and every day you're going to divvy up the loot. So each one of you is going to get one of these loot tokens, and some are a lot better than others. The way you determine who gets what is you all pick a card and then reveal at the same time and lay them out here. The person who played the highest ranked character is going to get the first pick of the loot that round, and then it's going to go in descending order. But before that happens, the pirates are going to get a chance to take an action, and that goes in ascending order. And so the actions are sometimes going to mess with the other players, or they're just going to do other things that benefit you, get you gold in other ways. The beggar is going to take money from the highest ranked character this round. So they know that they're not going to get the best loot because they've got a low number, but at least they're going to get gold in another way. And that person knew that was possible because you all start the game with the same 6 characters. And it all comes down to when people play what and how they interact with each other. What I love about this game is those interactions between players. You have to try and predict what other people are going to play. Look at the tiebreaker track to see, Are you more likely to go before someone to take the action or after them? What loot do you think other people are going to want? Is it worth playing your highest card now to get that map token you need? Or can you save it for later? And it's not just about what the other players are doing. The way your cards interact with each other will massively inform the order in which you play them. Some cards will end up in your ship, gaining you gold every round, so you want to get them out early. But then other cards will bounce off of that, getting you even more gold. And you really have to put thought into the order in which you play them so that that engine is going to work its best. But then counteract that with thinking about, no, but if I play that low card, then I'm going to end up with a cursed relic, and that's going to lose me more gold in the long run. It's such an interesting dynamic of trying to worry about your own little home, but know that you also have to walk outside and interact with the rest of the world, and they're going to be getting in your way. It's not a pirate game in the sense you're sailing out a ship and getting into a fight. But I feel like it captures a microcosm of what it's like to be a pirate, that you are a greedy, ruthless person that's only out for yourself. And I'd like to think that I'm not like that in the rest of my life, but I do really enjoy inhabiting that character when playing Libertalia Winds of Galecrest. And number 13 is Mysterium, and this is a murder mystery game with a twist. And that is that one player is playing as the ghost, and they're trying to communicate who killed them, where they killed them, and what weapon they used to the rest of the players. You're playing cooperatively, and the ghost is sending psychic dreams to the other players in the form of these weird, surreal imagery cards. They're trying to communicate information to the players so they guess the right suspect. So if one of them was this racing driver with a gold medal and some gloves, then they play cards that had that kind of imagery. Except it's not going to be that simple, so it might be colors or shapes that you're focusing on. The other players have no idea. The ghost can't talk, so they're just looking at these images and trying to piece it together, trying to find the connections that the ghost intends. And I love both sides of that experience as the ghost trying to piece together a clue out of these cards that mean nothing to anyone, and then giving them to them and listening whilst they completely misinterpret what you were trying to get across. And as the guessers, I love discussing through the clues with the other players. Each different person will find different things in those images. It really gives you an insight into how different minds work. The ghost has this amazing shield with all the cards on that they're trying to get the players to guess, so they don't need to look at the table to get the information they need. There's a simpler version of this game, Mysterium Park, which I still really like, but there's something about playing the original, despite the fact it takes more work to set up, that I just prefer. It has more spectacle to it. There's a bit more of a story to it. It feels like a bigger experience. And it does such a good job with the artwork and the theme. Having these crystal balls to make your selection all just brings the game alive. I've been playing this game for years. I had an older Polish version as well. And there's a lot of games that have come and gone in my collection that are inspired by Mysterium and do things very similarly with very similar artwork. But this one has stayed my favorite. I love the setting, and I think the gameplay in this is better than the rest. That's Mysterium. And number 12 is I My Favorite Things. And this is one of my favorite party games. And that's because it's all about understanding your friends. I love playing this with good friends and testing my knowledge of them. And playing it with people I've just met and getting to know them better. It works for both. The idea is that you give a category to the player on your right, and they have to rank their favorite things in that category. So you might say, what are your favorite carbs? And they write down chips and bread and rice, and each one of these has a secret rank. So they have said that rice is their fourth favorite carb. But that's secret. Nobody else knows that, only them. Then they're going to give those cards back to you with their secret rank, and you're going to use them to play a simple trick-taking game. So if you wanted to really win a trick, you could play bread, which you think is their favorite thing, the number one. And everyone else is playing a card from their category. So you've got polar bear as favorite animals, and yesterday, favorite Beatles song. Then when everyone's played a card, you reveal the ranks and see who won that trick. The player with the most favorite thing is going to win that trick. Except if somebody plays the one, the most favorite thing, that can be trumped by the zero card. The zero card is something in that category that you don't like, but you're trying to throw off the players. So you want to write something that they think you could like so that it's a bit of a trap. And that's the interesting thing about writing the categories and picking the ranks, is that you're trying to pick a category that you know that player about. So If you think you know what their favorite Beatles songs are, then that's great. Pick that category. But as the writer, you've got to put your favorite in, but then the others are just ones that you like in the order that you like them. So you're going to try and write stuff that's going to throw them off. Pick a Beatles song that you do like, but not many people do. And that's going to make it harder for them to play the game with. I love that challenge of looking at your cards, trying to guess their rank, but then you're also having to think about everyone else's categories. If they played Yesterday, that's not the world's greatest Beatles song. You think you could beat that with Chips, which is clearly a great carb. It's such a silly proposition, but it creates fun conversations. You get to know each other better or feel really smug that you already have them pegged. Absolutely love this one. And this is coming back to the market as my favorite things. And I hope it achieves the status of great party game that it deserves. And number 11 is Detective, a modern crime game, which is a cooperative crime-solving detective game, and an epic one at that. It's a campaign story that takes place across 5 cases that are all connected, and all will take about 2 to 3 hours to complete on their own. So there's a huge depth in the story that's being told here, and that's the thing I love about it the most, that you get so stuck into the details of this investigation and this story that spans like 60 years and multiple different countries and 50 or so characters. There's so much going on that you get lost in it. And that's why I play these games, for that immersion. And the overarching story of Detective is great. You are in modern times in America, but you're digging into a story that goes back to World War II, to Nazi Germany, and things that went on that then have an impact in the future. Now, I won't give any more away because I don't want to spoil the cases for you, but that story is incredibly ambitious. And at times, it maybe doesn't hold up, but largely it does. And for me, the journey of this game was what I enjoyed about it the most. And the game system itself is lean. It gets out the way. You read an opening scenario, and then you have some leads to follow. And they are just these cards. You pick out a card that you want to read, and you're going to follow up on a particular lead. And that will open up more leads that you can then follow. But it's not just what's in this deck of cards. You have access to a website that acts like a criminal database where you have interrogation reports and profiles of each of the suspects in the case. But with Detective, you also get the USP of it using real world information to inform the story. So you're not just talking about a fictional World War II character, but you are looking up things that actually happened at that time and throughout history on Wikipedia and on Google Maps to try and find information that's going to help you solve the case. And that makes it seem so real that they've managed to tell a story that intertwines fiction and reality. And you'll be taking notes the whole time, creating mind maps that connect all the characters together, because it's not just what's happening in this case, but there's a wider reaching story that's happening throughout the whole campaign. And I love that in this version of the game, they've included these photographs of the characters in the case that you can then write on and make notes about, because it brings alive that note-taking aspect, that you've got all your papers spread out on the table and all the pictures of the suspect. And the simple system they use for tracking the amount of time you spent and moving around the city adds interesting decisions to where you go. It's going to take you longer to get to the lab to check the DNA evidence, but maybe that's going to be really worth it because it's going to give you so much information than just interviewing a suspect that's probably going to lie to you anyway. I've also played and enjoyed the LA Crimes expansion for Detective, which is set in the 80s and also does a great job of creating a rich, immersive world to get stuck into. And I would also put at this point in my top 50, Vienna Connection, which is like a spiritual sister to Detective. It's the same team. It's a very similar type of game, but in that game you're playing as a spy in the Cold War. And that one is just as rich in terms of the story that you unravel and comes with a huge stack of papers of evidence. It doesn't use a computer in the same way because it's set in the 70s. But you just got to make sure with all of this stuff that you play with that same group and you don't let too much time pass between it because you're just going to lose a lot of it out of your head. So it's a great thing to get stuck into, but it is also kind of a commitment as well. And that's why maybe other detective games are more suited to different groups. It's not the highest detective game in my top 50, but I think the big highs that I got from this game are unparalleled, that it created memories that I'll just never forget. That is Detective, a modern crime game. Those are my top 20 to 11 board games of all time. If you'd like to buy any of them, there are links below. And if you want to see the final video in this series, please subscribe. I'm John Perkis. Thanks for watching.